Rules are taken seriously at the NBA, and for those caught slacking, some brutal penalties take care of matters. And burning holes through its players' pockets seems to be the league's favorite form of punishment. Watch on as we go over 7 insane reasons NBA players have been fined. Let's get into it.
But first, a reminder about our brand new giveaway. We're giving away a PS5 with a copy of NBA 2K22 and Madden 22. All you have to do is watch the full video, leave a like, comment the keyword hidden in the video, and make sure you're subscribed. It's that simple.
At number 7, not being honest about an injury. The talented and powerful Latrell Sprewell was down with a hand injury when he decided to represent his then team, New York Knicks. The catch was that his team didn't know about the fractured hand. Sprewell did play that night, but at what cost? He was soon to remain out of commission for a total of 6 months. When his team found out about the injury, they were absolutely enraged. To penalize Sprewell and also set an example for all the other players, the Knicks fined Sprewell an astonishing $250,000 sum and banished him from the team for an undefined period of time. So why did the Knicks fine Sprewell, even when he was the one risking it all to be able to represent his team? The reason is simple. An injured player increases the risk of defeat. It goes without saying that an unwell player didn't give a match their all. So hiding this from your team and playing despite an injury can very well be called deception. And if you look at it that way, the fine makes sense, even if it was outrageous. There were still many who opposed the fine. Okay, Sprewell hid his injury, but his willingness to still join training camp should have been appreciated rather than punished. Plus, he was one of the team's strongest at the time, so some consideration should have been given to letting it go. Sprewell himself spoke to the press about the team's decision. He said that his relationship with the team had taken a hit, but he still loved New York and would play for them. He told the New York Times, "The biggest thing to me is that I'm hurt, so don't kick me when I'm down. It's not going to affect the way I play. What it's going to do is affect my relationship with the front office. But as bad as I think their decisions are, I still love New York." Next, at number 6, drug possession. Back in 2003, the point guard for the Portland Trail Blazers, Damon Stoudemire, was handed a $250,000 fine for something he didn't even do inside the court. It was his 3rd time getting arrested for marijuana possession, and it had been publicized to the point where everyone was looking over to the Trailblazers. In a hurried decision, the team published its own personal punishment for Stoudemire's offense, a $250,000 fine along with suspension from the team. They even went the extra mile and encouraged Stoudemire to receive professional help for his addiction to the drug. Many thought the fine was completely justified and even set an example for the other players that some behavior was just unacceptable if a player would like to keep their position in the team, even if they don't practice it immediately in the courts. However, others looked upon the penalty as unfair and uncalled for. Stoudemire's weed possession had nothing to do with the team, and the Trailblazers had no right to penalize Stoudemire for something he didn't do while playing basketball for them. Now, at number 5, kicking a water bottle? In 2010, star player LeBron James was very angry during a game, and he made the unthinkable mistake of taking it out on a water bottle. Representing the Cleveland Cavaliers at the time, LeBron James was unhappy about a no call. He was called over by the team's head coach Mike Brown, but his affirmations didn't seem to work because James absolutely felt the need to kick a water bottle into the stands. Now, that's an understandable reaction, even if some would call it a bit unprofessional, but would anyone think it justifies the $25,000 fine James was made to pay? The team simply didn't want to take any chances and slapped James with a fine so similar situations would be infrequent in the future. But at least the team didn't go as far as handing James a suspension like the next player on our list. Next at number 4, making a hand gesture at a player. Dwayne may have been a total killer on the court, but we highly doubt any player ever feared actual physical harm at his hands. But that wasn't enough to convince the league to let it go when Wade made a throat-slashing gesture at another player during a game. Taking it to be a literal threat, the NBA fined the star player $25,000, and his team, the Bulls, even suspended him for some time, which really just goes to show how careful players need to be on the court to remain on the safe side. The penalty came as a surprise to many who thought it wasn't justified at all for the league to fine Wade for something as harmless as a hand gesture. But who could challenge the league's decision, right? Maybe they hadn't seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2 years before this happened. Now, at number 3, switching jerseys. Playing for the Bulls at the time, legend Michael Jordan wasn't giving his best, and superstitious as basketball players tend to be, Jordan decided it was his jersey behind the lack of a good mid-game. Promptly, Jordan decided to switch his for one that held the number 23, leaving the supposedly unlucky number 45 behind. His team still lost though, and on top of that, for every match that Jordan played in his 23 jersey, the team was fined $25,000 for allowing it. That seemed to have been successful in convincing other players not to switch jerseys mid-game, no matter how unlucky they think their current one is. There hasn't been a similar case ever since. Next up, number 2, shoving a referee. Okay, this might seem like an understandable reason to fine a player. Physically hurting referees is always a no-go at the NBA. But wait till you hear what happened after Nick Van Exel was fined for attempting to physically harm a referee. Back in April 1996, Nick the Quick lost his temper and couldn't help but hit a referee. He was slapped with a $25,000 fine along with a 7-game suspension. It didn't take the referee long to become active either, and he was ready to jump the table and fight Exel. And although the fine was supported by the majority of those who witnessed the scene, what happened just 5 days later made it seem quite outrageous. What makes the story crazier now is only 5 days later, another player was involved in harming a referee, but Magic Johnson didn't receive the same punishment as Exel. His penalty was much less severe, with a 3-game suspension and a fine of just $10,000. And at number 1, snowboarding? Our number 1 for today is just off the charts for a ridiculous NBA fine, and it was a substantial one too. Back in 2007, the forward for the LA Lakers, Vladimir Radmanovich, was given a $500,000 penalty for indulging his love for a sport other than basketball. You heard it right, Radmanovich was fined that heavily for snowboarding. For those of you who didn't know, the NBA actually has an elaborate rule in place which forbids any extreme sports, such as snowboarding. While the league doesn't have any problems with playing sports other than basketball, the dangerous ones are forbidden for their own good. About the fine, the league officials stated that any sports that put the player's safety at risk are not allowed by the NBA, and any players caught partaking in them will be handed penalties, like Radmanovich was. So yes, even if players pull similar tricks in the future, they most likely will be fined by the league. All of this might have you wondering, how does the NBA's fine system work? The NBA seems to hand penalties left and right, even for completely ridiculous reasons sometimes. So what's the mechanism behind these fines? How are they collected, and where do they go? As it turns out, there's an entire procedure that's followed before a fine is imposed on a player. It begins with strict monitoring of the player's behavior both inside and outside the courts. This extends to interviews, matches, and public appearances. If anything is spotted, the operations department of the league contacts the player and conducts an interview in which they interrogate them. This process is so speedy that it takes the league only a day to contact the required player from the time of the event. But before that interview is conducted, the player is also given time to prepare a strong defense. Then, after the interview is done, a punishment is decided based on 3 factors: the intention of the player, their history of breaking rules, and if they're willing to correct themselves. The decision regarding the penalty is taken shortly after the interview, and while it may seem unfair to many, the league takes it after diligent consideration. That was it for today's video. Do you agree with the fines we mentioned in this video, or do you think they're totally uncalled for? Let us know in the comments below. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel where we post similar videos quite frequently. We'll see you in the next one.